Oh, Persona 5, where do I even begin with such a game? My time with P5R over the past month was the first time since Elden Ring that a game truly took over my whole life. Only this time for twice as long. Yeah, that number's not so pretty, but you know what? What even is time anyway? At the peak of my playthrough, I was essentially doing 8-hour shifts of non-stop gameplay just to get this thing done, and honestly, I didn't hate it. You see, when you're dealing with a 9-year-old game on YouTube, it's not often you'll find content surrounding it from a completely new perspective. And that's where I come in. Most people with an affinity for RPGs have probably already played P5 at this point, but as someone who was really an outsider to the genre until quite recently, the Persona series as a whole was something completely foreign to me. But as I scoured the earth for video ideas after a couple bad apples, the realization came to me that I might actually end up liking this silly little thief game. So, 120 hours and 9 palaces later, I decided it was finally time to give my take on P5R from the eyes of a 2025 player. Now, I will quickly mention there will be spoilers ahead in this video. I imagine a lot of you watching have either played Persona 5 already or have watched someone else play it, but I figured it was worth putting that out there just in case. Now, when discussing how well a game is aged, usually the first thing that comes to mind is visuals, and quite honestly, I was very impressed with how good P5R still looks. And keep in mind, I was playing on the Switch version, and yes, I have a perfectly fine PC, but I wanted to play in bed, and then I realized I hate doing that. But even with this being on the least graphically advanced console, the game is still an absolute pleasure to look at, in no small part thanks to the amazing graphic design here, which was one of Persona's qualities I was already aware of before playing. It's crazy because even on PS5 or PC, you're still playing a game initially developed for PS3, so the graphics are nothing insane, but when you compare this to any random Unreal Engine 5 ray tracing slop that both runs and looks like shit, the difference is night and day. It wasn't until I saw footage of Persona 3 Reload that I even considered the game could look better than it already did. All in all, the Persona series is really a testament to how far quality art direction can take a game. Speaking of art direction, Persona 5 was surprisingly one of the only anime-styled games I'd ever played, and don't get me wrong, I'm the last person to hate on this kind of thing. Naruto was and still is the frickin' bomb.
No way he just put in a Naruto reference in there. Sasuke! Naruto! Sharingan. Izanagi.
And it was always a delight to see the game's 2D animated cutscenes whenever they would appear. Even outside of art direction though, the game is very Japanese in basically all facets. Whether it be character names, the setting, or hell, basically the whole game is a critique on Japanese society. And there were certain things I had to look up on my own time to fully appreciate some of the game's commentary. I used to always find it jarring when English localizations would keep the inclusion of honorifics when characters were referring to each other, but when the game is so intrinsically tied to the culture of Japan, it does make sense in this case. I ended up having to look up what words like senpai actually meant since, the Westerners have, bastardized it.
Japanese is a very complex, deep, and sophisticated language compared to English. Japanese is just too deep for a lot of Americans and Europeans.
One thing that probably differed with my experience with Royal compared to that of other fans of the series is that with me being so many years behind the curve, it was very hard not to get spoiled about certain things. Especially with the way algorithms work nowadays, if you look up one tutorial video about like a puzzle in one of the palaces, you're gonna just be a few refreshes away from a YouTube short just casually dropping the identity of the traitor. So yeah, nearly everything about Akechi was already known to me before he even appeared in the game. I knew about the pancake shit, I knew that he died, I knew that he lived, I knew he was allegedly gay, based on this YouTube thumbnail I still have in my watch later. It really makes me wonder if at least the traitor aspect of Akechi was already obvious to people going in blind, because the moment I saw him and realized who he was, I frickin' detested him, and I wondered, how is this guy like popular in the community? And then when he came back to life for like one of the 4 or 5 times that happened, I started to kind of get the appeal, and again, one thing I wonder and will probably never know is if he was as popular as he is now before Royal came out, because much of his spotlight as a hero came with the new content in the updated version. Despite all this though, I would say I'm not someone super bothered by spoilers anyway. If anything, I kind of enjoyed the novelty of anticipating certain events before they would come, although I can admit part of me wishes I had gone in knowing less. One of the other things it was difficult to not get spoiled for was the identity of the game's final villain. The moment I knew the Royal version entailed an extra semester of content that was completely missable, I immediately had to make sure I did whatever it took to unlock that. And what do you know, you just gotta max out the confidants for Kasumi, Dr. Maruki, and Akechi. Are these guys important? Speaking of things that are important, you've made it to the halfway point of this video, so if you're enjoying, you know, what you're seeing, I would appreciate it if you could click that little subscribe button down below. Yep, that one right there. I'm gonna be streaming my first time playthroughs of both Persona 3 Reload and 4 Golden in the coming weeks, and I'd love to have you guys tag along with me. Anyways, I'd say it's due time we get a little change of scenery in here.
Now, one of the main things I wanted to mention about my playthrough was my slight disappointment with the additional Royal content in Persona 5 Royal. You see, even though P5R has experienced far more exposure than the original version of the game, and the majority of players have only gone through the game in its updated Royal form, as I played, I couldn't help but feel like Royal was built with the pre-existing Persona 5 fanbase in mind. This was mainly apparent in... hold on.
Oh, that thing smells horrible. Wait, if I took off my mask, doesn't that mean my persona should have appeared? As I was saying, this was mainly apparent during the transition between the vanilla content and the royal content right on the turn of the New Year's. You know, I really liked all the stuff from the vanilla ending. I felt like Yaldabaoth was a very sensical final villain that tied everything together with the metaverse. And it acknowledged the fact that even if you remove evil and distorted people from power, you still have to confront the society that both created and nurtured those people in the first place. There was something just very empowering about literally killing the manifestation of humanity's apathy. It's because of this that I was just a little disappointed when suddenly all of my efforts as a phantom thief were suddenly for basically nothing. Now, I actually think Maruki's story, and by extension the third semester as a whole, were really great, but it definitely felt like the game had something different to say than it did in the vanilla version. The game even tries to make an attempt at connecting Maruki's story to the whole Shido plot by saying it was Shido that shut down his research, but it still sort of felt like an afterthought. And honestly, I don't see any real way they could have tied these two arcs together in a more meaningful way without massively changing the original story, and since the royal content is technically optional, they had no real way of doing that. Again, I really like what the writers did with the first semester. I love when stories deal with elements of bringing back the dead. It's one of the reasons I absolutely love Naruto, as I mentioned earlier in this video, and I love the fact that the game doesn't try and make Maruki overly evil. A lot of stories that introduce these types of like sympathetic villains kind of shy away from making them too agreeable so that you still have reason to fight them in the end, but it's made very clear here that the world would be totally fine if Maruki won, and if anything, there's a decent chance that everyone would indeed be happier in his world. But the game allows you to make your own choice in this case, and I really appreciated that. It's funny though, I talk about how I wish the new royal content was better integrated into the main game, but when they actually did try doing that, I absolutely couldn't stand it. What I'm referring to here is Kasumi, and to my understanding, the fanbase really likes her, but in the entire pre-New Year's section of the story, I absolutely hated her. I thought she was the worst character in the whole game. And I'm not kidding you, I actually dreaded when she would appear. Now, once the third semester did come around and we got more of her backstory and character depth, I didn't mind her as much, but until that point, I saw absolutely no reason to like her, despite the game insistently telling me that that's how I should have been feeling. From the exact moment she's introduced, she's made out to be just this absolute radiant beam of sunshine that just loves Joker for no reason at all, and she's like uncomfortably nice. It's like she's written to either be in one of two modes, those being the Board of Writers' wet dream, or I can actually be sad sometimes too. Anywho, that brings us to the end of this video. I know I made it seem like I had a lot of problems with this game, but really the stuff I mentioned here was the only gripes I had with my whole playthrough. And I can confidently say that P5R is probably my new favorite game of all time. Just barely surpassing Deltarune as well as like, I don't know, Black Ops 3 or something like that.
No, don't shoot it with your staff.
Shoot it with my gun.
Yes, shoot it with your gun.
Oh, make wrong one! Jay!
Oh my god!
I'm officially all the way on the Persona hype train now, so as I said earlier, make sure to tune into my P3 streams, and I'll see you guys next time.